Greetings, people of the internet. Unky Joe here. Unky Joe's Aquatics. I guess that's what we're calling this channel. One of these days I'll get a new title, a new intro up. But for now, let's talk about one of my favorite things to talk about, fish. So come with me. We're going to walk out here into the den. And the tank we're going to pay attention to today is, well, let's see. So this is the tank we're going to be talking about today. This is my 55-gallon community planted tank. And as you can see, it's had a reset. So let's go find out how and why I reset it. Alright, so to start any journey, you must begin at the beginning, and that's what I did here in this case. So it wasn't that the tank was unhealthy or anything, it was just I was frankly tired of looking at it. The jungle valve had kind of gotten out of hand and we served its purpose. Just so you know the history of this tank, this is one of the oldest tanks I've had. I've probably had this tank for, oh, I don't know, probably 15, 20 years, probably ever since we moved into this house. We've had this tank, so nearly 30 years. And I kind of put it away in the shed a few years ago, and out of sight, out of mind. And then I got back into aquariums, and this was the first one I set up. And basically all I used to do for my tanks was under gravel filters, gravel on the top, plastic plants, fill them with fish, and off I went, happy as a clam. This time, inspired by Father Fish and a bunch of other people on YouTube, I was inspired to try my hand at plants, and so that's what I did. And this was my second planted tank. Well, my first one. This was an experiment, and all I did, I figured I had all this lovely gravel in the tank that was full of fish waste and old food and all kinds of nutrients, you know, that settled to the bottom. So I just emptied the tank. I rescued the fish out of it, emptied the tank, and poured pool sand over the top of the rocks, of the gravel that I had in there. And then I just went to town planting jungle valve. And that's what you're seeing me removing here very carefully, is the jungle valve, because it literally took over the tank. So without any nutrients, without adding any chemicals or any kind of fertilizers or anything like that, just based on fish waste and fish food, leftover fish food, I was able to keep these plants well fed, and they grew by leaps and bounds. And then, just things happened. I wasn't happy with the layout of the tank. I wanted to get more sand on the bottom, and I wanted to move the jungle valve to the back of the tank. So in order to do that, you got a couple of choices. You can try to catch all the fish, which is impossible in a planted tank, and scoop them out and then tear down the tank. Or you can tear down the tank with a fish in it, which is, in my way of thinking, much less stressful way of doing things and a lot easier for me. So what I'm doing is I'm draining some water off it here into a plastic tub, where I'm going to put all the jungle valve and all the other plants that I pull out of the aquarium. And then I've just dropped a quick little internal filter in there to kind of get rid of the debris in the water, so I can see, because as I dig up more of this jungle valve, you're going to see that more and more does the water get cloudy. Plus, to top that off, I've got a very large Amazon sword plant in there that has to be removed as well. So any tank breakdown begins with removing the plants and putting them into a safe location. And you can just drain some aquarium water off into a bucket if you want to, and then put your plants in there. And I put a bubbler in there with an air pump just to kind of keep things, going fine. Now, this doesn't hurt the fish at all to swim around in their own waste or into that muck. This is why I put that filter in there, just mainly so I can get the water clear as soon as possible and see what I was doing in order to get all the plants out of there, which is the goal that I accomplished, as you will see. Now, the trick with jungle valve is you just kind of scoop your hand underneath it gently and wiggle the sand around until the roots kind of come out of the sand and the gravel, because they had not only grown into the sand, but down into the substrate or the gravel in the tank. And yeah, and they were in there pretty good. Now the next thing I'm doing is I'm siphoning off the crud on top of the sand. And I'm doing it by 5-gallon bucket full, and then I take that and I dump that into my toilet, which then goes out into my septic system and feeds the environment. Or I'll take some of it, pour it in the garden during the spring, and use it to water the garden. I also use it to water the house plants. It's great water. You don't have to, as long as you don't drink it. So what I'm doing is getting all the muck off the sand, just trying to get as much of the garbage, the old uneaten food, and the rotted wood from the wood I had in there that the plecos eat, and that kind of thing. And just little by little, I take the water out of the tank, get it down to its basic level, and I leave the fish in there. There's no need to take the fish out and stress them. And if you look on the front of the tank, you can see my mystery snail is still doing its job, going around and getting stuff off the glass and eating the food that's uneaten. And I must have made 10 trips with this bucket. So now I exaggerate it. There's only 55 gallons of water in this tank, so I probably made 6 or 7 trips with that bucket. And I just get it down to the point where I feel I've gotten most of the debris out of the bottom of the tank, and you can see I'm siphoning some more of it off with a smaller hose. And just to get the rest of what is called detritus out of the tank. And I find that, I've been doing tanks since I was a 13-year-old kid. Worked at a fish store when I was 13 or 12 or 13, and I've just had a love of fish ever since then. So I don't get too caught up in this. You got to do it this way, you got to do it that way. I know what my fish will tolerate and what they won't, and so I know what I can get away with, right? Just comes from years of experience. Now here I am. I've gotten all the old debris out of the tank, and I've gotten the old plants out of there. I left the Amazon sword in there, or did I move it already? I can't tell. And now it's time to attack the glass with a razor scraper and get all the old calcium deposits off. And I'm actually filling the tank back up with water because I've done what I needed to do, which was get all the gunk that was in there out of there. And then what I'm going to do eventually is go back over the top of this sand with some more pool sand, and then I'll replant the tank. You won't get to see me replanting the tank, but you will see that I've torn it down. I'm adding water. I'm using one of the magic erasers. You can get them, and online without any chemicals in them. I just use that to clean up the inside of the glass. So my basic goal here is to get water added back to the tank. Now the reason I don't want to take all the nastiness out of the tank is because the tank is cycled. So the key is I don't want to have to go through the nitrogen cycle process again. So I'm always leaving a little bit of old tank water and a little bit of old detritus in the aquarium, so that it can, it doesn't have to go through a cycle again. And that way it doesn't increase the ammonia level of the tank, and you stress the fish to where it can kill them. And then, so that's all I'm doing is going along trying to even out the sand now. And what you're not going to see is me adding new sand to the tank, but that's okay. Now the next thing I did was I got a canister filter for this tank, and I'm going to do a review on it later, but it's a Sun. It's about a $80 canister filter. I just decided I had a hang-on back filter on here, and it was doing fine. It was an old was it a Marine Land? I don't know. I'd had the filter 15 years. It served me well. I prefer canister filters on larger tanks, or hang-on back filters as opposed to sponge filters. And we'll go into that why one of these days, but it's just my personal preference. So this is me wiggling around there trying to get the the filter in place, getting everything hooked up and make sure it wasn't leaking. And I put the inlet on one side and use the return on the other side so it gets a good flow going in the tank. And so it took a little while to get the hoses all attached. And you got to soak them in warm water so they're easier to move around, and you got to clamp them all up there. And I wanted to do it right, take my time. So that's what we're doing here. We're getting it fitted for the new filter. And no, bought this one with my own money from Sun. And again, I'll put some information up here on the filter shortly. Alright, so the tank is not 100% complete, but the reset is looking good. So I cannot take credit for this. This tank I set up over a year ago, and I just poured sand over the top of the gravel that was there and planted a bunch of jungle val and some of this fern over in the corner, and just kind of let the tank go, and it took care of itself. The problem is I get tired of the look and I wanted to play around with aquascaping and with using rock and making use of all the jungle val and kind of brightening up the tank and and you can see the fish have kind of really responded to it. I've got my neon tetras in here. They're growing up. These used to be over in the tetra tank. Now they're over here. They're doing very well. And I've got assorted mollies and guppies, and I've got some Cory catfish swimming around here. I got a panda Cory down here as well. These are green Corys. And I didn't realize how many trumpet snails I had till I disturbed the substrate. And all I did was I reset this. You'll see in the footage, I just reset it with the fish in it. I'm not real big on having to chase fish down and stressing them out and taking them out of a tank. So I just did this update. I cleared I took all the all of the plants out first, and then all the hardscape, and then I drained the water down as low as I could, kept the fish in it, and then used this old substrate, just capped it with new sand to use it as a growth medium for the jungle val to go back in. And so I'm sure some of this jungle val is going to die back and go into shock or whatever because it's been moved. And I need to trim it up a little bit, but man, oh man, the tank looks a lot brighter and healthier, and I didn't honestly realize I had quite that many fish in this tank, but as you can see, it's quite full. Another decision I made was to go ahead and put my cover back on it, even as badly torn up as this cover is, because my pleco in here disappeared, and I don't know whether he jumped out, was sucked out in the old hang-on back filter that used to be here. I had an old Whisper dual thing filter, and he just disappeared. And he was big and healthy. He wasn't sick or anything, but he just disappeared out of this tank. I've checked every piece of wood I took out, every rock, the filters. I just couldn't find him. So I don't know if he jumped out. I've looked behind the aquarium, couldn't find him. But one thing it also told me is I'm done playing around with, well, for this time. Let me turn on the light. And I went ahead and got a canister filter. I picked up one inexpensive Sun canister filter. I just love canister filters. I end up cleaning these things once a year when I put them on a tank like this, and they're just one less thing I have to worry about. Even though I use planted tanks, I like the idea that with these canister filters I can get a lot of biological media in there and use a lot of biological filtration to help keep the water. One, I like my water to be crystal clear, and two, I like the surface area that a canister filter affords me. Now, before I had a hang-on back filter in here, but I didn't like the look. I didn't like the flow. The fish really didn't like the flow. And since I put this in, it's got quite a gentle flow. It's one thing about this canister filter, it's bare bones, you know. You said it doesn't even have a power switch. You just hook it up, plug it in, load it with media, and go. And it primed easily. I haven't had any trouble with these. These filters are about 80, 90 bucks for this size. And they work, I'll pop some information up on the screen, and they work great. You know, they serve the purpose they need to. Now, I'm obsessed with gadgetry when it comes to aquariums, especially filters. And normally I use sponge filters in my smaller breeding tanks. It just makes my life easier. But I don't like them in my show tanks. I like the idea of a canister filter and a good flow. So I've got a Fluval canister filter coming. I've got another canister filter here that I'm not being paid to check on these filters. I just enjoy playing with them. So I've ordered them in. They're affordable. And we'll see how they do long term. So also on this aquarium I have this Aquaneat long LED light, and it's gotten old. But the other reason I put the cover back on is because the bubbles from the air stones here, because I've got one there, I've got a bubble wall back here, and I got another air stone here, is it was splashing water up onto the fixture, and you see how it puts all that crap on the side of that. I've got to clean this light fixture. I did clean it up the other day. And then I've got the two floodlights here to give me additional light. Now they're on a timer. In fact, it's past their bedtime right now, but they're staying up a little late so I can get this footage. But the tank reset's complete. Pretty much. We had another piece of wood in here floating. We had to find a home for. That piece is not going to stay there. That piece I'm going to redo. I don't know. Like I said, my spouse arranged the rocks because I don't have enough talent to do that kind of thing. And I like it. This is all Cirrus stone. I think I paid for a 25-pound bag of these rocks on Amazon. I paid 28 bucks for it. So a little more than $1 a pound. But it gave me some nice stones to choose from. This one didn't come with it. That was one I purchased here locally at one of the pet stores. But yeah, the fish are really enjoying this tank, and it's not the last of my resets, and it just goes to show you, you don't need these. Well, I'm just going to tell you the way I do my tanks, and if you want to spend money on Fluval substrate and special soils, Amazonia, you go right ahead. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to, because there are several different ways to skin the cat, as they say, although that's a bad analogy. As long as your plants grow, whatever you plant them in, consider that a win. So these plants they took off in this tank, and they continue to live and produce, and yeah, it's a healthy tank. Now it's got a filter on it that I don't have to worry about for a while. I'll be checking this filter out every 3 months. And the way you tell is by if your flow gets reduced on your filter, but it should do and I use the old filter media out of the old hang on back to get this filter media started. I just put a couple of the old filter pads in there with all their muck and bacteria on them in order to get this filter started. So hopefully we won't have a ammonia strike or anything else. And I don't know what's going on with these cories. I'm wondering if they might be hungry. They're swimming around. They're pretty active. So I don't know if they're freaking out because they need food or they're just happy. I don't know. But and then you've got this one down here who's just chill as can be. He's like, I'm not going to go swimming around. So don't ask me why. So yeah, there you go, folks. Another tank reset. I just couldn't look at it a minute longer, and I've found out that when the urge strikes me to go ahead and reset a tank, I just didn't like the look of that tank. It was more of a proof of concept on this aquarium because you see, I'm the old school guy that used to do under gravel filters for all of my tanks, and I live by it. In fact, that tank for years ran off an under gravel filter, and I never had any problems with it. But then again, I never did a planted tank. It was always buying those plastic plants and filling it full of those and then filling it full of fish. But I very seldom lost fish, and if I did, it was usually due to illness. It wasn't due to tank chemistry or anything like that. It's the way I've always set up my tanks. I start them up, I dechlorinate the water, and I throw a bunch of fish in there, and I hope for the best. Usually it served me quite well. Now the one difference might be that I always use, in addition to an under gravel filter, was a hang-on back filter. I never was a big fan of the in-tank, foam filters. I like the hang on the back filters because the filter is removable and you can replace it, wash it out, put a new one in, whatever. And I think that's what saved me, because that sets up biological filtration rather quickly in those little sponges and whatnot, the little surface area of the tank and the filter. So that's probably been my saving grace on not using a planted tank and having great success. And that's what that aquarium was. It was a great success for 4 or 5 years. I never touched it. I just fed it every day and cleaned the filter once a month, but over the years I get tired of looking at it, and then I got bit with the bug again to do a tank again. And that's when I said, well, I've got all that gravel in there, it's got all that fish poop and fish food waste and everything in it. Why don't I just cover that with sand? And then the substrate could be gravel. The plants will grow into gravel. They'll grow through the sand into the gravel. Trust me, I've seen plants grow into any and everything. So I did that. I put some stem plants in there. I also put some epiphytes in there. Those are ones that grow on rock, just to experiment. And I put a Java fern in there. I put was it a Java fern or was it it was an Amazon sword I put in there. And it just, you saw it. You saw the roots were huge on it. And that was simply a plant planted months ago into sand on top of old, dirty gravel that had countless number of dead fish in it and fish waste and whatnot. I never cleaned that tank. I never have. I guess I subscribe to the father fish method that way, is just leave the tanks alone, let them ecologically balance themselves. I just have a different way of going about it. So don't let people tell you can't grow plants in sand or gravel or this or that or the other. You don't have to have dirt. There are so many different ways to do these tanks. It's part of the reason I started this channel, is just to show you my way of doing it. May not be your way, but it works for me. And no, I don't get stunning, glorious, wonderful tank growth like someone like MD Fish Tanks gets, or one of these bigger guys, or even Fish Shop Matt for that question, or for that part. But that's not what I'm after. I'm just after a healthy, ecologically balanced tank that I don't have to spend a lot of time maintaining, but I want to spend a lot of time admiring, if you get what I mean. So there you go. We hope you found the video entertaining and informative as always. Please give us a thumbs up down below if you liked the video. Leave your comments down in the comments section. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. We can really use the channel growth. It'll let YouTube know you're watching my content. So come back and see us again, and don't forget, we'll see all of you somewhere under the sea. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
I've been watching old Unky Joe. From Texas heat to where the cacti grow. Fixing server solar power in the land, hoping that his plans all stand, making life a touch more bright underneath those southern